I still remember the moment clearly. It was a quiet afternoon. The house smelled of tea and warm bread. I was standing in the kitchen, drying the dishes gently, when my daughter walked in. She did not greet me. She only stared. Her eyes were cold, tired, and somehow angry. Without any warning, she asked, "How does it feel to be worthless, Mom?" For a second, I thought I misheard her. Maybe she was joking, or maybe I misunderstood. But her face did not carry any sign of softness. It was sharp, almost proud. I felt my heart slowed down, like everything inside me was sinking. My hands stopped moving, and the towel slipped from my fingers. I wanted to ask why she would say something like that, but it felt like no words would come out. Silence filled the room. I looked at her, waiting for her to laugh, to say I'm sorry, to correct herself, but she didn't. She crossed her arms and sighed loudly. "All you do is sit at home. You don't work. You don't earn. You don't contribute. We take care of you. You depend on us." Her voice was sharp, each word hitting me deeper. "You are useless now." My breath felt heavy. The kitchen, once warm and comforting, suddenly felt cold. I wanted to tell her the years I had given, the sleepless nights when she had a fever, the days I walked to school under the burning sun with her heavy bag, the times I skipped meals so she would have enough. But all those memories stayed trapped inside me. Instead, I whispered, "I am sorry you feel that way." She rolled her eyes. "Sorry does not change anything." Then she walked out, leaving behind the sound of her footsteps and a door closing too loudly. I stood alone. My heart trembled, but not from anger. It was sadness, quiet and deep, a sadness that stays silent even when it screams inside. I leaned on the counter and closed my eyes. The house felt different now. It no longer felt like a home. I could hear the clock ticking, slow and steady, reminding me of time passing, reminding me that I was growing older. As I stood there, I thought of the past. When she was little, she would run into my arms, smiling as if I was her whole world. She would say, "Mom, you are the best." I would hold her close, feeling important, loved, needed. But now, her words were different. They were sharp enough to leave marks on my heart. I did not cry. I simply felt quiet in that silence. Something inside me shifted. Not anger, not revenge, just a soft realization. Maybe I had allowed others to forget who I once was. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to remind them. After that painful moment in the kitchen, I tried to continue with my day as if nothing happened. I washed the rest of the dishes slowly, letting the warm water run through my fingers. It felt easier than thinking. But deep inside, something was changing. I was beginning to notice small signs I had ignored for too long. It started with simple things. My daughter would come home and walk right past me without greeting. When I cooked her favorite meals, she barely touched the food. She would complain about the taste, the smell, the portion, anything she could find. I thought maybe she was stressed, maybe work was hard, maybe she just needed space. So, I stayed quiet. Then it became small comments. "Why are you always home? You should do something useful." Or, "We do everything for you." These words cut deeper than she realized. Or maybe she did realize. I could not tell anymore. One evening, I tried to sit with her in the living room. I smiled, hoping to start a gentle conversation. But she brushed me off. "Mom, can you please go? I'm busy." She did not even look up from her phone. I walked back to my room slowly, closing the door softly so she would not hear the sound of my heart sinking. At night, when the house was quiet, I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling. I wondered if I had done something wrong. Had I loved too much? Had I given too freely? Or was love simply forgotten when it no longer served a purpose? Days passed, and her behavior grew colder. My presence seemed to bother her. When guests visited, she introduced me as if I was just someone staying in the house, not her mother. She never mentioned the sacrifices, the warmth, the years of care. I felt invisible, standing in my own home, breathing quietly so I would not disturb her peace. One day, while she spoke to her friend on the phone, I heard her say, "My mother doesn't do anything. She just sits around. She's basically useless." The words hit harder than she could imagine. I pressed my hand to my chest, letting the ache settle. I sighed softly, remembering when she used to brag about me in school, telling her teachers, "My mom can do anything." It was heartbreaking how time can change hearts. But even through the sadness, I remained calm. I did not shout. I did not fight. I simply watched and listened, learning something new with every silent day. Sometimes, love means stepping back, not to disappear, but to grow quietly and silently. I began to think about a secret, something I never told her. Something that would one day remind her exactly who I am, because no mother is ever truly worthless. If you're enjoying this emotional journey, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps these real stories reach more hearts. The days that followed felt slow and heavy. The house used to be full of noise. There was always laughter in the mornings, footsteps running through the hallway, and the sound of plates clattering during dinner. But now, silence lived where joy once did. I moved through each room gently, as if I was walking through old memories. One morning, I decided to clean the living room. It was something I always enjoyed, dusting the shelves, arranging books, making the cushions look neat. But when my daughter walked in, she frowned. "Why are you touching my things?" she asked sharply. Her tone surprised me. "I was just trying to help," I whispered. "Well, don't," she said, grabbing a book from my hand. "Just stay in your room. That's where you belong." Her words lingered in the air long after she left. I stood there, frozen, as if the world suddenly turned colder. The room felt unfamiliar. Was this still my home? Or was I now a guest in the place I helped build? I slowly walked back to my room. On the way, I passed a family photograph hanging on the wall. It was taken years ago. We were smiling, holding each other close. My daughter's eyes sparkled with joy. I stared at the picture for a moment, touching it softly. I wondered where that love had gone. That evening, when she came home, she barely spoke. She went straight to her room, leaving the dinner I made untouched. I sat at the dining table alone, listening to the ticking clock. Each second echoed louder than the last dot. As the night grew deeper, I walked to the window and looked outside. The street was quiet, and a soft rain began to fall. Raindrops tapped gently on the glass, sounding like tiny whispers. I felt a strange comfort. Nature, at least, never stopped talking to me. I thought about the secret I had been holding for years, the achievements I never shared, the strength I never showed. I had hidden it not out of fear, but out of love. I wanted her to shine. I wanted her to feel proud, not overshadowed. But now, maybe sharing my truth was not about pride. Maybe it was simply time. The next day, things did not get better. She left early without saying goodbye, not even a simple take care. I watched her leave through the window, and my heart felt like it was shrinking. I sat back down, folding my hands in my lap, thinking quietly. Sometimes silence teaches louder lessons than words ever can. That night, something changed in me. I felt a gentle strength rising, like a soft flame growing in the dark. I realized I had allowed others to define me for too long, and one day soon, she would see. Every mother carries a story, a strength, and a purpose, even when the world forgets. A few days later, something happened that stayed with me. I was walking down the hallway, carrying a small basket of folded laundry. The carpet felt soft under my feet, and the house was quiet, as usual. But as I passed by my daughter's room, I heard voices. She was on a video call with a friend. "What does she even do all day?" my daughter complained softly. "She just walks around, cooks things nobody eats, and sits like she has no purpose." Her voice was filled with irritation. Her friend laughed lightly. "Sounds tiring." "Tiring. It is embarrassing," my daughter replied. "People my age have mothers who are working, traveling, living their lives. Mine just exists." I froze in place, my heart beating slowly, painfully. I did not want them to hear me, so I stood still, holding my breath. The basket in my hands felt heavier with each passing second. I gently stepped backward, careful not to make a sound. When I entered my room, I closed the door quietly. I placed the basket on the bed and sat beside it. The folded clothes looked neat, clean, cared for. They were small acts of love, invisible to others, but meaningful to me. I thought about the years I had spent working silently at home, not just cooking or cleaning, but comforting, guiding, teaching. I remembered the times my daughter cried over small failures, and I stayed awake all night, holding her hand. I remembered the school fees, the dresses, the meals cooked late at night because she was hungry after studying. Was all of that now forgotten? Later that afternoon, I tried talking to her gently. "Is something bothering you?" I asked. She shrugged without looking at me. "No, I am fine." "You seem upset lately," I whispered. She sighed loudly. "Mom, please, just stop worrying. It makes you look more helpless." That word again, helpless, worthless, useless. They were beginning to sound familiar, almost like background noise. I walked back to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and sat at the table. The chair felt cold. The house, though modern and bright, felt empty. I watched the sunlight move across the floor slowly, like time dragging itself forward, and in that quiet space, something inside me settled. I finally understood that I had spent years giving love, expecting nothing in return. But now I needed to give something to myself, to respect that night. As I lay in bed, I placed my hand on my heart and whispered softly, "Value does not disappear with age. It simply waits to be recognized." The secret I carried felt heavier and lighter at the same time. Soon, she would know who her mother truly was, because every storm prepares a soul for its truth. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps these emotional stories reach more people. The next morning began like every other. The sky outside was pale and soft, and a gentle breeze entered through the kitchen window. I boiled water for tea and stood quietly as steam rose into the air. The house was silent again, but not peaceful. Silence can sometimes feel heavy, like unspoken words hanging above you. As I opened a drawer to find sugar, I noticed something buried underneath old receipts and dried flowers. It was a small brown envelope. My handwriting was on it, neat and careful. I pulled it out slowly. When I opened it, old documents slid into my hands. They were certificates from years ago, awards, letters, achievements I had earned before marriage. My heart paused. It felt like I was touching an old version of myself. One certificate had my name printed in bold, recognizing me as the top student at my university. Another letter from my former workplace praised my dedication and leadership. There were newspaper cuttings, 2 pictures of me receiving awards, smiling proudly. I stared at these papers, feeling tears well up, not from sadness, but from forgotten pride. I had once been someone strong in the eyes of the world, a woman who worked, led, achieved. But after marriage, I chose family. I chose to leave my job, believing my daughter needed me more. I chose late nights and early mornings. I chose love. But somewhere along the way, my achievements faded like old ink. Not for me, but for those around me. Later that day, my daughter walked into the kitchen. Her expression was distant. She opened the fridge, looking for a snack. I watched her quietly and said, "Do you remember when you used to brag about me?" She frowned slightly. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "Back in school," I continued softly, "you would tell your friends I was the strongest woman you knew." She rolled her eyes. "That was when I was a kid." Her words stung again. Childhood love replaced by adult judgment. After she walked away, I picked up the brown envelope and held it close. A thought crossed my mind. Perhaps it was time to place these documents somewhere more visible, not to boast, but to remind her gently. Sometimes the world only sees what is in front of it. That evening, I sat alone in the living room. The documents spread across the table. The light from the lamp softened their edges. I ran my fingers over each line, remembering the feeling of applause, the weight of medals, the pride in my parents' eyes. I whispered to myself, I was not always invisible. And somehow, the papers felt like seeds of strength waking up again. Maybe tomorrow, I would share a piece of this forgotten story. Maybe tomorrow, she might listen. But for now, I folded them neatly and placed them where sunlight could find them in the morning. The next morning, sunlight gently filled the living room. It touched the documents I had placed on the table, making them glow softly. I was sitting nearby, holding my cup of tea. I did not plan anything dramatic. I simply waited, quietly, like a whisper in the corner of the room. My daughter walked in, yawning and scrolling through her phone. She stopped suddenly when her eyes fell on the papers. She picked one up slowly, squinting at the bold title. "What is this?" she asked. "Just some old certificates," I said calmly. She read another one. Her face softened for a brief second, but she forced it back to coldness. "These are yours." "Yes," I answered quietly. She placed them down and shrugged. "Okay, but that was a long time ago, Mom. Things change." Her words were gentle, but not kind. I smiled softly. "Do you think people lose value when time passes?" She hesitated. "No, but if you are not doing anything now, then..." I looked at her with calm eyes. "Are we only valuable when we produce something? When we earn money?" She looked away, uncomfortable. "I mean, that's how life works now." I nodded slowly. "Maybe. But tell me, when you were little and sick at night, who stayed awake with you? Who cooked when you were hungry, even at midnight? Who held your hand when you cried after failing a test?" She said nothing. I placed my tea gently on the table. Love is not measured in salary. Care does not come with numbers on paper. My daughter bit her lips slightly. Something in her eyes changed. just for a moment, but pride is a stubborn wall. Later that day, she told her cousin on the phone. Mom found her old documents. She thinks that makes her important again. Her tone held a faint laugh. I stood near the stairs, listening quietly. It did not hurt the way it once did. Maybe because I finally remembered that my worth never depended on her approval. That evening, I sat at the dinner table alone. I thought about how often love goes unnoticed when it becomes routine. I thought about how easily sacrifice fades in the memory of those who benefit from it. After dinner, she walked past me with barely a nod, but I noticed she looked at the documents one more time before going upstairs. Curiosity was growing, and curiosity can open doors pride tries to keep shut. Before going to bed, I whispered to myself, seeds take time. I felt peace settle in my heart, not because she understood, but because I understood myself again. And quietly, softly, I knew this story was not over. Some truths are shared slowly, like sunrise spreading across a quiet sky. If this emotional story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps these real stories reach more hearts. 2 days passed quietly. My daughter did not mention the documents again, but I noticed small changes. When she walked into the room, her eyes drifted toward the table, lingering there for a second longer than before. It was as if her mind was beginning to whisper questions she did not want to ask out loud. One afternoon, I was watering the plants on our small balcony. The leaves glistened in the sunlight, fresh and alive. I found peace in moments like these. The world outside felt calm, even if my heart was still learning how to be. I heard footsteps behind me. My daughter stood at the doorway, holding one of the certificates in her hand. Her expression was different this time, not cold, not angry, but curious. Mom, why didn't you ever tell me about these? I smiled softly. You never asked. She looked down. But you were so good. You won awards. You worked in such an important place. I did, I replied quietly, and I loved it. But when you were born, I made a choice. I wanted to raise you myself, to give you more than my time at the office ever could. She frowned slightly. Couldn't you do both? Maybe, I whispered, but every time you cried at night, every time you needed me, I wanted to be there. Without question, she sat down slowly, her voice a little softer. I didn't know. You were too young to remember, I said gently, and I did not want those stories to become burdens on your shoulders. Love should feel light. We sat quietly for a moment. She traced the edges of the certificate with her finger. Did you miss your job? I took a long breath. Sometimes, but I never once regretted choosing you. Something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or gratitude trying to find its voice. Mom, I think I judged you because I thought being at home meant doing nothing. I shook my head kindly. Caring for a home means carrying pieces of everyone's life. It is tiring, even if no one sees it. She bit her lip and nodded slowly. I guess I never tried to see it. That evening, I found her quietly folding laundry without being asked. It was a small gesture, but it carried meaning. The house felt a little warmer, like the walls themselves were breathing easier. Later, as I prepared tea, she spoke softly from the doorway. Mom, can we talk more tomorrow? I want to know about your old life. I smiled. Of course. When she walked away, I held the warm cup close and exhaled. Pride can create distance, but curiosity can build bridges. And for the first time in many days, I felt a door opening slowly, gently, on its own. Some hearts do not change overnight. They soften one quiet moment at a time. The next morning felt different. The house had a softer silence, not the heavy kind. I prepared breakfast slowly, humming quietly to myself. When my daughter came into the kitchen, she looked at me for a moment, almost as if seeing someone new. She sat down without rushing. Mom, she said gently, can you tell me more about who you were before all of this? I smiled. Her voice no longer had sharp edges. I placed a warm cup of tea in front of her and sat across the table. The chair felt lighter today, while I began softly. When I was younger, I worked for a company that built programs for hospitals. I was part of a team that helped doctors use computers for patient care. It was important work, and I loved it. Her eyes widened slightly. You helped hospitals? Yes, I nodded. Back then, it was something new. Technology moved slowly, but we worked hard, sometimes late into the night. She leaned forward. Why did you stop, Mom? Why give up something so big? I looked at her gently. Because you were bigger. She didn't speak. Her throat tightened, and she blinked quickly. I remember the night you had a fever. I continued quietly. Your tiny hand was so hot. The doctor said you needed constant care. I held you the whole night. I decided that nothing in the world mattered more than you. She lowered her head, whispering, I never knew. You were too young, I repeated softly. A child only sees comfort, not sacrifice. She took a deep breath. Mom, when I called you useless, I was wrong. I placed my hand over hers. Words can hurt, but they can also heal. And today, your words are healing. Her eyes glistened. She whispered, I thought value came from money, from work. I forgot that love is work too. We sat quietly, letting the truth settle between us like warm sunlight. Later that afternoon, she helped me in the kitchen. It was simple, but meaningful. She tasted the soup and smiled. It's perfect, Mom. The praise felt like a soft blanket around my heart. That evening, she came into my room with the old documents in her hands. Can we frame these? I want to keep them where I can see them, so I don't forget again. Tears welled in my eyes, not sad tears, but the quiet kind that wash away old pain. Yes, I whispered. When she hugged me, her voice trembled. You were never worthless. I was blind. I held her close. We all forget sometimes, but remembering is what matters. As the night settled, I looked at the framed achievements on the wall, but the real achievement was sitting beside me, the return of respect, and in my heart, I felt peace. Not because I proved anything, but because love finally spoke louder than pride. Sometimes, the greatest power we hide is patience. If this emotional story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps these real stories reach more people.